Hi, I'm Sydney, and I am a servant of the Almighty God. Today, I want to talk a little bit about shape shifting, what it demonstrates. If we look at, our history, in many cultures, we have this concept, and it's normally a scary thing, right, of human beings being able to shape shift. You have this thing of, people turning into, werewolves and back and forth, right, between human beings and werewolves or some kind of, demonic or scary being. And based on our current knowledge, when we think about, like DNA, right, the DNA between two different species, yeah, right there we can basically discount all of that stuff. Because obviously, you take a human DNA and then you say you want to change it, all that encoding, which changes the form of the creature, right? From walking on and having two legs and a certain proportion between, the lower and upper body and to change that from one creature into another creature where the DNA literally changes, that sounds impossible, right? Sounds impossible. But as we have been taught, with man, these things may be impossible. With God, it is not. And the thing that I want to get into here is not that you have DNA switching. What I'm talking about is when you have, for instance, this screen right now, you cannot change the video on that screen because that is fixed. You can only read what the end product. If you're using a computer screen, and even though you can put in information, you can only put in where the programmer, the architect of that design. You can type here and it can tell you type certain kinds of information. But if you go way back and you can get to the source, which is kind of what software engineering is about, we go in and we build code, we build different methods to do certain things. We can have that screen change all the attributes of that screen. So think about it. When you are down at the end user and you're seeing something, that's fixed. But the design of it. So this is where we have, like in computing, right? We have the current system, it's binary, based on the binary, right? Zeros and ones. So you have these little switches and that basically is the fundamental thing. Now we have, quantum computing where it's not just like an on-off switch. You can have between on and off, you have all these different things it can be. So that's, in a nutshell. The point here is this. If you have the fundamental pieces, the very, very small pieces, you can change things so that the outcome is so different, it actually looks like they are contradictory. Bear with me a little bit. So this is why, for instance, you hear now some of the people who are doing AI, they want to build their own chips. Why? Because it gives them something that's tailored to what they want to build. It's the same thing as if you're building a house and someone says, I'm going to give you finished walls. Then the walls are finished. You can just put it together. But it says, I'll give you the materials, and I'll give you an architect to design certain things so it's sensible as far as from an engineering standpoint for strength and all these things. You can go ahead and build it however you want. So what I'm really getting to is this. The architect, the one who has all the finest pieces, can sometimes build things that look contradictory. Case in point, you would think that, like, now with our science, let's say with computers where we have the most advances, or with medicine, we use existing chip technology, and with those chips we have a certain kind of programming and we move forward. They all look the same. You know, in anything that has computer ability, right? Anything that has artificial intelligence, you know that somewhere in there is a circuit board, and you have a certain kind of chips on it. So the moment you see something, oh yeah, this, we know somewhere in there there's circuit, there's, because that's how we build things. We build, there's a certain circuit board, and you have this intelligence in there on these processors, right? However, for a really intelligent being, our creator, even beyond DNA, there are other, the tiniest pieces. This is why we can see some things seem that appear to flow in one direction, like us. We see things built with, just to show you how contradictory, you know, when you have all the fundamental pieces, you can see things like us with what we call an endoskeleton. We have a skeleton within us that keeps us upright, or maintains a certain shape. That's the bones within us, and we have all these nerves and everything that connects us. And you would think that if we had designed this, then everything would be designed that way, because this is a design that works. This is a design that works. However, as we all know, we have many things with that skeleton on the inside, and then contradicting what we will accept as we would design, because all our things are on, we have chips on some kind of circuit board, and we put those, multiple of those on circuit board. We can put multiple in different parts and have them work together, but they're very similar. We see by his design so many things that have a skeleton on the outside. On the outside, just think about that. And so when they say that, you know, it's random, yes, suddenly we start seeing, no, there is intelligence, and that made a choice and had control of the very fundamental pieces, the basic pieces. And we see design that says, I will amaze you. I will design things with structure on the inside that supports it. I will design things with structure on the outside. I will also design things with no structure at all that holds it together, right? Of course, we know an octopus. There is not that structure that holds it firmly. It can take the shape, it can change the texture. And you would think that with our level of, you know, our sophistication, all our machines go the same way. Basically, it's, you know, there's a chip, there's a circuit board, and chips, and we wrap something physically around it. And so the intelligence is in that same thing, but we can always go to that look for that circuit board, look for the type of chips, know the capabilities, that sort of thing. But with all of his designs, you can't tell where the intelligence is. Not in the same place. It, you know, recently they were talking about even jellyfish seems to have, you know, like almost like a distributed intelligence. It can be trained, they can learn. So it means it has a memory someplace. And so that memory is not always in the same place. That intelligence, and sometimes again, the intelligence is not within just one copy of that animal. It's, you have groups, you have clusters, you have swarms, you have all these things, and they seem to, you see the intelligence in how they, like birds traveling, you know, they're going to from a cold place to a warm place, for, you know, and when they form structures to assist each other. So one goes to the front, and then you have the turbulence, they all, so it saves the rest, and then they shift kind of like, you see the intelligence in that. So somehow between the flock of birds, you see not just the intelligence in one, there's like a flock intelligence. You see it in the bees, the swarms, the way they coalesce. There is an intelligence there. And the reason I chose this, this shape-shifting theme is because we can see that things don't have to be, as you become more intelligent and you have the fundamental pieces, you can design things that seem contradictory. We are not there yet. All our things go the same way. So this is why you'll see we have some things that breathe oxygen and other things that use other gases. This is why when you design, if we were perfect, we would design ecosystems with different things. At this point, something, look at us on trees, right? We give out something, trees use that. And so this is the process that shows that intelligence that design things in an ecosystem. And then we have where within one life form, we see that shape shifting, right? So again, some of these things sound contradictory, but it just shows intelligence and the wisdom of our Creator. Like the classic case of shape shifting that we know of is the butterfly, right? It starts from an egg, and then you have caterpillars. And the caterpillars, if we hadn't observed this entire metamorphosis of a butterfly, you would never associate a caterpillar, which can be different sizes, different colors, with they have their own defense mechanisms, and whether they actually can have poisons based on what they eat to protect themselves. They have their defense mechanism, but you would not associate a caterpillar with this, even with a chrysalis, and the changes that occurs within that literal shape shifting from a caterpillar to a chrysalis. It's mind-boggling that something random would simply decide, yes, I'm going to take this egg and let it grow into a caterpillar. And really amazingly, we see things like constraints, right? As we design, we have certain constraints, and we talk about time, cost, and scope, and all this kind of stuff. The time it takes, and the cost associated with that, and the scope is how much you want to do. But when you look at a caterpillar, you see certain constraints as well, because there is a time constraint that says within this time. And that time may be variable based on the availability of food, for instance, right? So it may take a little bit longer. It has to eat to get to a certain point. That intelligence, think about it, whatever is, formulates the rules that enables a caterpillar to, well, obviously, does the caterpillar really know that I'm going to eat, and when I eat to a certain number of days or whatever the time frame is, I will then go through this metamorphosis, which we don't know, what stresses and strains go on that caterpillar, that enables it to transition to this new form, shape shift from what looks like a worm into this little thing that you see just hanging there, this seemingly solid, and within that, the transition from that caterpillar that goes on. Again, there's a time factor. So what we see there, it's something that there is immense intelligence that is in play. And the really cool thing about this is that this is so normal to us. We don't think about, wow, could you design something like, why would you even design something like that? Why would you design something like that? Right? A caterpillar is a caterpillar. We build a car, it's a car. Right? It's gonna be that forever. And so this is something that in some ways, some of these things, they seem so contradictory, but they are great learning tools. So when I started talking about, it seems impossible for, and I'm just going on our knowledge now of DNA, to change a human DNA into a dog or a werewolf or whatever, DNA, right? All the physiological changes have to occur. So we don't see that, I don't see that path. But you can have something like a moth or a butterfly that starts as an egg, goes into a caterpillar, changes, and then again you have that restructuring, because you started with the intelligence and the basic units, the basic pieces. So you say, no, I can create a process where these fundamental pieces, I encode something that says after this much time, you will change into this. You can't start just with the butterfly. You have to start with the fundamental pieces, and you encode that intelligence in there. So it's the basic beyond the DNA itself. There are certain genes, there's a lot of programming, and that has to be encoded. So it's remembered within that. And this is the magic of our Creator. Nature, random, does not do that. You would think of a random process would not encode something so specific that you have a caterpillar coming from an egg that with a certain parameters again. And this happens across the world. This changes at a certain time. It has to eat to get a certain amount of, store a certain amount of food, then change into a totally different form. You cannot, if we weren't aware of it, there was no way you would identify this becomes really, and then it changes into a moth or a butterfly. But this, sometimes we see these things are for us to reveal to us the majesty of the Creator. Know that He has the fundamental pieces, so He can start designing and design one thing with a skeleton on the outside, one thing with a skeleton on the inside, and we're like, why? But it's a demonstration, a manifestation of His omnipotence. We need to recognize this. So things that we think of are impossible, it's being demonstrated around us. And as again, our science is very young. It's only a few hundred years old, our advanced sciences. So when we start thinking, because we do stuff with chips, with inanimate chips, when you start talking about life and we understand the secrets of where that information, because we can't find a spot where the information is stored that dictates to this caterpillar that it will turn into a chrysalis and eventually into a butterfly, right? Within our systems, we have chips, and we know we can go into RAM or in non-volatile RAM. There's a place, it used to be a hard disk. We would store that information there as to what you would do. Now we have a specific place, and that information is stored there. With life, we don't know where that information is stored and coded and stored, but we know it's there because we see that pattern. We see that pattern, the recurrence of certain events at certain times. So we understand that. It's unfortunate, however, that we've created this nature God, and says nature designed and implemented this. So this is why I wanted to talk about that shape shifting from one form to another. We can recognize intelligence in that design as well, and especially in the butterfly. And there are many other examples across nature as we think, but these are all God's creations. And so I want you to think about this, and so that we can all. I'm lucky that I was inspired to do this work, but I know that you will take this further, because it is meant for all mankind. It is meant to take us to the point where we truly start recognizing God's omnipotence in everything around us. I'd like to remind you, this is no coincidence that you are listening to this. And I know that in time, based on decisions that you've made in the past and you will continue to make, this whole entire process will be moving forward. I want to thank you for that. And once again, I want to thank you for taking the time, and may God bless.